This evening, first, Georgetown explodes with color and culture as Mashramani 2026 transforms the capital into a living celebration of unity, creativity, and national pride. Plus, President Dr. Mohamed Irfaan Ali sets a bold one-year target to ensure all bottled water consumed locally is produced right here in Guyana. Also, the extradition battle involving Azruddin Mohamed and his father moves forward again after key constitutional challenges are dismissed. Meanwhile, 32 families receive keys to new homes at Peters Hall under major housing initiative. And internationally, Mexico deploys thousands of troops after the killing of cartel leader Nemesio Oseguera sparks fear of violent fallout. Those stories and more coming up. Stay with us. Welcome to this broadcast of Channel 2's Headline News Update for February 24th, 2026. I'm Bibi Bacchus. Thank you for joining us. First up, 4 months after a formal request from the United States, extradition proceedings against two high-profile businessmen remains stalled in Guyana's courts, prompting renewed criticism from the Attorney General. Attorney General Anil Nandalal says the extradition case involving U.S. indicted opposition leader Azruddin Mohamed and his father, businessman Nazar Mohamed, is once again cleared to proceed after the High Court dismissed the bulk of their constitutional challenge to the Fugitive Offenders Act.
What the judge has essentially done is clear the way once again for the extradition process to continue. That is what they wanted to prohibit. They were saying that the entire scheme, the entire legislative scheme under which the extradition is being done is unconstitutional. And the judge said, no. One minor part of it is unconstitutional. And that is neither here nor there, because it doesn't change anything. And that is what is important.
The United States formally requested the pair's surrender in October 2025, following indictments in the Southern District of Florida on charges including wire fraud, mail fraud, and money laundering. The men were arrested and brought before Magistrate Judy Latchman, where committal proceedings began under Ghana's extradition law. However, the matter has since been delayed by a series of legal challenges. The Mohameds filed both a judicial review and a constitutional motion targeting several provisions of the Fugitive Offenders Act. Acting Chief Justice Narendra Singh ruled that 3 of the 4 challenged sections were constitutional, declaring only one subsection inconsistent, a provision Nandalal says does not affect the extradition process. The businessmen have also appealed a High Court ruling dismissing claims that the extradition process was tainted by political bias. The appeal is set for a hearing on March 10, 2026. Nandalal maintains that extradition hearings are limited in scope and should focus strictly on documentary evidence submitted by the requesting state. Unless the Court of Appeal grants a stay, the committal proceedings in the Magistrates Court are expected to continue this week. On a different note, Georgetown traded its usual Monday peace for feathers, flags, and festivity as Mashramani 2026 burst into the streets in a radiant celebration of culture, creativity, and national pride. Under the theme Expressing Our Culture Through Innovation and Creativity, this year's MASH brought a modern twist to a beloved tradition, as revelers in boldly designed costumes danced along Church Street and onto Vincentian Road. The capital became a living gallery of color and movement, with beautifully crafted headpieces, technologically enhanced floats, and contemporary interpretations of Guyanese folklore. Mashramani, which commemorates Ghana's 56th anniversary as a republic, continues to serve as the country's grand cultural showcase, a moment when communities across the nation come together in celebration. Ministers of government joined their respective ministry bands on the road, adding their own energy to the festivities in observance of the Republic milestone. Patrons lined the streets from early, simply soaking in the atmosphere. Many agree that the celebration grows more spectacular each year. Families were out in full force, with children perched on shoulders and elders waving flags as bands rolled past. The air pulsed with soca, calypso, and steel pan rhythms, while vendors kept the crowds refreshed with local delicacies and icy beverages. As sunset approached and the final bands made their way along Vincentian Road, One thing was clear: Mashramani 2026 once again reaffirmed its place as Ghana's ultimate expression of unity and joy, where innovation meets tradition, and where the spirit of republic shines brightest in feathers, fabric, and fearless creativity. Moving on, President Dr. Mohamed Irfaan Ali has announced plans to ensure that all bottled water consumed in Ghana is produced locally within the next year, outlining what he describes as a transformative vision for the country's water sector. The head of state made the announcement during the commissioning of the 5 Miles water treatment plant in Bartica, Region 7. The president said, Ghana, often called the land of many waters, must capitalize on its abundant freshwater resources and reduce its reliance on imported bottled water, directing the Ministry of Public Utilities and Aviation to establish a 12-month target for full local production.
It can't be such a resource-rich country in fresh water and be importing bottled water. This ministry must therefore set its sight on a target of ensuring that all our water consumed locally is produced locally in the next 12 months. Whether we have to collaborate, and we must collaborate with the private sector to ensure that they build up their capacity and capability. Every entity don't need to have a water blower, the bottle blower. We can have one entity that produces all of the plastic bottles at standard size across the country so that we have economies of scale. So we have to look at all the verticals and to see how we can have economies of scale at every level so that we can bring down the cost of water.
The Ghana Water Incorporated estimates that locally treated and bottled water can retail for about $100 Ghana with effective cost management.
What we have to do is work with the private sector to see how we can actualize this so that a country that is known as the land of many water can have the cheapest water available to its people and its citizens.
Beyond producing bottled water, the president said, Ghana needs to manage its water resources more effectively. He explained that water should not only be seen as something we use every day, but also as a valuable resource that can help grow the economy, create new opportunities, and strengthen the country's future. Stick around when we return. 20 patients regain mobility through the Prosthetic outreach program, and 32 families receive keys to new core homes at Teachers Hall.
Good girl forget things.
What's the problem, Granny? I want money for borrow for those surgery. I was dancing and I fall and fracture my hip.
If you need some quick money, you should check Lender's Jewelry and Pawn Shop.
Lender's Jewelry and Pawn Shop, Lot 238 South Road Border, Georgetown. Get jewelry made to order in just 72 hours. We also accept vehicles. Lender's, best rates, longest payback period.
Boys, I get through. Plus, I could dance again.
Lender's Jewelry and Pawn Shop.
Welcome back. 32 citizens are celebrating homeownership after receiving the keys to their new homes at Peters Hall on Friday under the government's housing drive. The houses were built under the Adequate Housing and Urban Accessibility Program, funded by the Inter-American Development Bank and implemented by the Ministry of Housing's Central Housing and Planning Authority. Each 400 square foot unit, valued at nearly $5 million, includes 2 bedrooms, a kitchen area, and washroom facilities. Beneficiaries contribute $100,000 towards the construction. Among the beneficiaries is 66-year-old Wanda Abrahams, who is visually impaired and said she is relieved to no longer pay rent.
Knowing that I do not have to pay any more rent and I am the owner of my own home, I am proud of that.
Abrahams expressed gratitude for a home designed to accommodate her needs, noting that building on her own would not have been financially possible. Another recipient, Diana Port, said the new home will greatly improve her living conditions and thanked the government for supporting persons in need.
It will improve my life because right now, the house was really bad. You know, it fell on one side, and I also would thank the IDB for sponsoring and the government.
Housing Minister Colin Crowell said only 34 of the 256 core homes remain to be completed, describing the initiative as part of a broader effort to close the housing gap. The government has allocated $159.1 billion this year for housing development, with 15,000 house lots expected to be distributed. In other news, the Ministry of Health, through its Rehabilitation and Disability Service, has expanded national rehabilitation care following a successful prosthetic outreach program that restored mobility to 20 patients and strengthened local technical capacity. An international team from the US-based organization Prosthetic partnered with local clinicians at Autonomy Reed Rehabilitation Center to assess, fit, and train patients in the use of prosthetic limbs. The visiting team worked alongside local staff to ensure knowledge transfer and sustainable service delivery. Minister of Health, Dr. Frank Anthony, said the initiative goes beyond clinical care, helping patients regain independence, confidence, and the ability to provide for their families. He noted that many amputations stem from diabetes complications and emphasized the importance of prevention and improved disease management. Director of Rehabilitation and Disability Services, Dr. Adrian Mangar, said the program also trained 6 new prosthetic technicians, marking a major step in building national capacity. Plans are underway for collaboration with Jaipur Foot to assist an additional 100 patients. Beneficiaries shared emotional testimonies of renewed hope and independence after receiving their prosthetic limbs, describing the opportunity as life-changing. Don't go away after the break. 4 years of war take toll on Russian economy as sanctions bite, and Epstein files. UK ex-envoy to US Mandelson released on bail.
Good girl forget things.
What's the problem, Granny?
I want money for borrow for those surgery. I was dancing and I fall and fracture my hip.
If you need some quick money, you should check Lender's Jewelry and Pawn Shop.
Lender's Jewelry and Pawn Shop, Lot 238 South Road Border, Georgetown. Get jewelry made to order in just 72 hours. We also accept vehicles. Lenders, best rates, longest payback period.
Boys, I get through. Plus, I could dance again.
Lender's Jewelry and Pawn Shop.
Welcome back. Now we take a look at what's happening in the region and around the world.
Good evening, I'm Dominic Gittins. Tonight, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio heads to St. Kitts and Nevis for the CARICOM summit. Mexico deploys troops after the killing of cartel leader El Mencho. Russia's war economy strains civilian life, and former UK envoy Peter Middleton is arrested. We begin in the Caribbean. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio will visit St. Kitts and Nevis on February 25th for the 50th CARICOM Heads of Government meeting in Basseterre. Rubio is expected to discuss regional security, illegal immigration, trafficking, economic growth, health and energy cooperation. The summit, chaired by Prime Minister Terence Drew, runs from February 24 to 27 and will address key regional development and security challenges. The death of Mexico's most wanted cartel leader, Nemesio Oseguera, also known as El Mencho, has prompted authorities to deploy 2,500 troops to Jalisco State to prevent violent suppression battle. Oseguera, who led the Jalisco New Generation cartel and had a $50 million US bounty on his head, was skilled in military operation after intelligence tracked him to a cabin in western Mexico. Al Jazeera's John Holman reports.
An eerie quiet in Mexico, a day after the death of the country's most powerful drug lord. Schools out, many businesses are closed. And the trucks that the Jalisco New Generation cartel dragged across roads to stop Mexican security forces and create chaos have been moved out the way, says the president. You can rest assured, she said, that peace, security and normality in the country are being safeguarded. In a morning press conference, new details too about the army raid that killed Nemesio Oseguera, otherwise known as El Mencho. One of his romantic partners unknowingly gave him away. Mexican intelligence tracked her to an assignation with him in Tapalpa, a small tourist town in West Mexico.
She met with El Mencho, this romantic partner, and on February 21st she left the property and we got the information that he was still there.
The armed forces moved in, encircling the cabins he was staying at, while helicopters filled with special forces laid down withering fire. El Mencho fled to the woods. There he was seriously wounded. He died on the way to hospital. So who was this man who defied the Mexican government for more than a decade? As a teen, he was a drug runner in the US. Here's his mugshot, aged 18. Then a cop in Mexico, a surprisingly common route for many budding gangsters. Finally founding his own cartel, gaining notoriety when his troops shot down an army helicopter. Songs sung about him. Stories and videos of his men giving medicine and toys to the poor. He wanted to be a Robin Hood. But most importantly, drugs trafficked by the ton. Cocaine and fentanyl heading to the US. El Mencho's cartel has a presence in all of its 50 states. That's why US authorities put a $15 million bounty on his head and eventually supplied intelligence that helped kill him. Even in the wake of his death, El Mencho left violence. 25 National Guardsmen were killed by his men just in one state, Michoacan, in the chaos on Sunday. And there were 85 narco blockades, as they're called, in different parts of the country. But his body's now been formally identified here in Mexico City. He is gone. He leaves behind a paramilitary organisation with tank-like armoured vehicles, rocket launchers and a huge arsenal of guns and manpower. Now nobody knows what they'll do next, or who will take charge. The army's already sending 2,500 reinforcements to Jalisco State, the cartel's stronghold, to keep the peace. With a World Cup coming up that Mexico will joint host, a succession battle is a worry, especially with matches to be played in Guadalajara, Jalisco's capital. John Holman, Al Jazeera, Mexico City.
4 years of fighting have taken their toll on Russia's economy, forcing the government to prioritize military production over civilian needs. Despite widespread signs of fatigue, public discontent has been suppressed through state repression of criticism. Al Jazeera's Yulia Shapovalova reports.
At first glance, many Russian cities look normal, but look closer and you will see evidence of a crumbling economy. The country's budget is in deficit. Oil revenues are down due to sanctions. Taxes have grown, so too has inflation. The economy now prioritizes military production over civilian needs. Social media videos show people complaining about soaring food and utility prices. One of the most visible signs is the mass closure of shops and restaurants, including these ones in Moscow's Patriarchy Pons district, a once popular dining area. We asked Muscovites how their lives have changed over the past 4 years.
I believe that our lives have changed for the worse because a lot of people suffer from it. My relatives in my native city of Volgograd bear the brunt of the war. There are attacks on all kinds of power facilities, leaving people without power and heating, plus there are water outages. I think Russia hasn't achieved anything good so far. I don't think it will end this year, and it will definitely not end with a great victory of Russia. As always, ordinary people will pay for all this.
Everything is fine. We're just waiting for our relatives and friends to come home.
State media continue to spread the message that Russia's slowly but steadily moving towards victory, and the country is doing particularly well.
Public discontent has almost disappeared with the government's repression of any criticism of the war. As the Kremlin continues to finance its military operation, the burden on people here only increases, while their incomes decrease.
Despite widespread signs of fatigue and tension, many Russians are reluctant to speak out and just go about their daily business. Yulia Shapovalova, Al Jazeera, Moscow.
Former UK ambassador to the United States, Peter Medicine, has been arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office and released on bail. The arrest follows the release of Jeffrey Epstein files that allegedly show Medicine sharing confidential government information with the late sex offender, including memos on the British economy and EU bailout prospects. Al Jazeera's Jonah Hall reports.
Once a cornerstone of British politics, here being marched by police from his London home. Peter Mandelson, former government minister, advisor and ambassador to the United States, arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office. It is an offence that carries a maximum sentence of life in prison. It could be the final twist in a tumultuous career that took him from Whitehall to the White House.
Adrian, what a beautiful accent, too. I'd like to have that accent. Thank you. My mother would be proud.
Mandelson was fired as ambassador after allegations linking him to the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Documents released by the US Department of Justice appeared to show that he'd shared confidential government information with Epstein, including memos on the state of the British economy in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis and the prospect of an EU bailout. Information he had access to during a decades-long career in the British government and as EU Trade Commissioner. Those revelations shook the government of Keir Starmer, leaving the UK Prime Minister fighting for his political life as he tried to justify how and why he'd appointed a man who many believe shouldn't have passed a background check.
At the time I appointed him, I got answers from him which I believed to be true. He painted a picture of barely knowing Epstein.
And Mandelson is not the only establishment figure to fall. The Epstein scandal has consumed royalty as well. The former Prince Andrew, brother of the King, once a UK trade envoy, also arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office for allegedly passing trade secrets to Epstein. And worse, allegations of sexual abuse as part of his friendship with Epstein. The one-time prince and the politician once known as the Prince of Darkness, two pillars of the British establishment, now rocked to its core. Jonah Hull, Al Jazeera.
Thanks, Dominique. This brings us to the end of our regional and global news coverage. Up next is the 3-day event forecast. And that's it with your headline news for this Tuesday evening. As we take our leave, we invite you to follow us on Facebook and YouTube. You can tune in tomorrow at 6:30 a.m. for rebroadcast and at 7 p.m. for our news. Until then, please take care of yourselves and each other.